basic question is what is artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. But yeah. So I think you might have many people might be confused like what is the difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning, right? And you have understood. I mean, in week one, you have been given this definition by Tom Mitchell, who first coined the term machine learning, and he said that is the study of algorithms that improve their performance at some task T with experience E, and this task is a collection of E, T, and E. Like first time I read this definition, it barely made any sense to me. So like uh, how to explain this? So you are doing some task. You have been given a task. So let's say, for example, the task could be to identify if a mail that you received is a spam or not, right? That's your task. So you receive many spam emails every day in your Gmail ID or whatever. So let's say the task is to identify whether the email is spam or not. And you know you see the email, and let's say you find some words which you can connect that okay, if the email has the word money, let's say money 5 times, right? Then you can see that okay, this might be spam, right? Whereas some friend calling you for lunch, that might not be spam, right? There is no money involved. So you get automatically suspicious when your email has the word money in it. Are they asking for money from you or whatever? So you know so you have that experience, right? So that is your experience, that you can from your experience you can tell that okay, this email contains money, so this email might be spam, and your task is to see whether that email is spam or not. And now you have, let's say you have received 100 emails, and out of that you have like categorized, let's say 10 emails as spam, out of which let's say two emails were not spam. So two emails you mistakenly categorized as spam. So now you calculate your performance. Okay. So you calculate your performance, and how do you calculate your performance? So this is very subjective. So there is a loss function which I'll come to later on. But here you see that you have categorized two emails which are not spam, but you have categorized them as spam. So that is your performance metric. So one metric could be, let's say, uh, kind of the false positives. Like what is the false positive ratio? So 2/10. So that is like 1/5, 20% is your uh, false positive ratio. That is your error rate or something like that. Right. So 80% is your performance rate. Right. So now you learn from your experience, and you see that whether what are the two emails and why you categorize them as spam, which should not be categorized as spam. And now you try to improve your performance with your experience, right? And then you perform the task again, and then you come up with a better model to categorize spam, right? So this is what this three parameters P, T, and E correspond to, right? So okay. Now, yeah, what is the difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning? So artificial intelligence, I would say, is a broad, term again. So artificial intelligence covers everything in which a system can learn from itself. You know, so yeah, I don't have a very objective definition in mind, but anything you see that which can learn from its experience, and produce new results, and that can be classified as artificial intelligence. I'll come to some examples later on in the next slide. I'll come to some examples, of course. But machine learning and deep learning are subsets of artificial intelligence. And in which way are the subsets, and how are they different from each other? That's the question you must be wondering, right? So machine learning is something in which so there are few differences in the machine learning. Okay, so first let's see what are the similarities. Both the systems, both machine learning and deep learning, you give some input, they train on that input, and and then they train on the training data, uh, and then when you put the testing data on that model, they give you the output of that testing. So both the systems work in that way, right? But there are some differences in which machine learning and deep learning works. So machine learning requires some human intervention, whereas deep learning requires minimal human intervention, and they learn on their own. So in which way, where does the human intervention come in machine learning? Is this the experience step, right? So you learn something, right? You learn how to classify it as spam, and then you have to, come up with a better model, from your experience, and that's where the human intervention comes in. You have to give some better model to the system so that it learns from your experience. Whereas deep learning, it is more, so you have heard about neural networks, right? So how you so okay, I will not go into much detail, but when you give an input to a neural network, and it learns on its own, and it produces the output. There is no uh, human intervention to better to learn from experience. It learns on its own. The experience it learns on its own. Whereas in machine learning, you have to give some human intervention so that the machine learns on its own. Other differences could be, like machine learning has, mm, it trains its model very fast compared to deep learning, whereas deep learning takes a long time to learn. So, this you may or may not have heard about some deep learning models like ResNet and Inception and those things. So if you go into the Keras page, like you can just Google Keras models, Keras deep learning models and something, and it will give you a list of the models which have like millions and millions of data on which they have trained. These are already trained models, right? And they have taken like months and years maybe to train on those data for simple tasks like classification of images, let's say. So if you are given an image, you have to classify it whether this is an image of a cat or a dog or some other animal. And those models, they have already trained those models, and uh, they have taken months, and you give image as input, and it goes through a bunch of hidden layers, and then gets classified as whatever, any animal or something. So those are the things that we do in deep learning. It takes a lot of time, whereas in machine learning, it is not so time consuming. And I think, yeah, I think there might be a few more differences. Does anybody know any other differences between machine learning and deep learning? You can feel free to add. Okay. So, yeah, can you give any example to differentiate linear and logistics regression? Yeah, I'll come to that. I'll come to that. I have some examples on that. Yeah, before I move to the next slide, I'll just, focus on this thing. I think this was covered in week one as well. So in traditional programming, what we do is that you give the data and you write your program, and you let the computer do the task, and then you get the output. Whereas in machine learning, what you do is you give the data and the output. So by data, I mean, let's say you have 1,000 pictures of cat, dog, and other animals, and you give the output. By output, I mean that all those images are classified as some category. So that is your output. You know that this is a picture of a cat, this is a picture of a dog, this is a picture of a cow, this is a picture of a horse, and so on. And you give the data and the output to the computer, and you let the computer decide, uh, how to make a model of it for, let's say, a neural network through which it passes on, and what are the weights of each of those networks that you have, and so on.